And I am recording. We're back. This is going up on a Wednesday because Kale, actually the other member of Pump Take, lives the room directly beside me in our house. And so I heard him do the intro for the show that's going to be coming out on Monday. So in fact, he will already have updated you on everything that I'm about to say. Anyway, but we're doing something a little different here at Pump Take Sports now. So Kale will have already said this in the Monday show, but if you didn't see that, him and Marco are going to be doing a basketball show every Monday. Me and Aidan here are going to be doing a show every Wednesday on football. And then Lucas and another guy, a new guy to the show, Alex Hobson, he was on the World Junior Preview. They're going to be doing a hockey show that comes out every Friday. So this is our way of kind of giving you more content, more stuff to work with, and kind of working in all of our strength areas at the same time. So anyway, besides that, Kale already said that on Monday. How you doing, Aidan? We're going to do a little mock draft today.
I'm feeling pretty good. We got a schedule now. I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I'm fully in draft season right now.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to get this thing going.
Yeah, me as well, man. So to explain, I'm gonna be sharing my screen. We're gonna have a cool mock draft simulator thing going on. And just to like preface with everyone, we're gonna be doing this based on a little bit of mix of what we think the team needs and what we think the best player available is in like our rankings and our thoughts. So there's going to be a little mix of both of that. So Aidan, while I'm sharing my screen here, if you want to like kind of go into that a little more, just how we're going to be evaluating like the picks through the thing.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of like Jake was saying, when I am projecting what I think teams are going to do, like in a mock draft or just thinking about team needs, I like to do a mix of what I think the team should do, or maybe objectively what the team should do, and what I think is going to happen. So obviously, if you've seen an NFL draft before, there's as many twists and turns as in like a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
So obviously, we can't accurately predict everything that's going to happen, even if there wasn't a lot of surprises. It would be hard to just accurately predict like that.
Exactly.
So we like to do, and what we're going to do today is a good mix of both what we think the team's going to do, maybe what they should do, and what we would do if we were sitting in the general manager's chair for all 32 teams.
Exactly.
Yeah, so obviously there's going to be some things we're not right about. Maybe there's some things we will be right about. It's a little early at this point, but I feel pretty good about the number one pick at least.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. The other thing is we're just doing the first round today.
Yeah.
It's possible as we go through, we might do. We're going to do a couple more mock drafts for sure throughout draft season. Maybe we'll do a second round. Maybe we'll even do team mock drafts for specific teams. We'll see. But for now, this is mock draft 1.0. Yeah. Trying to do a little bit of prediction, a little bit of what we think about these players.
Absolutely, man. Well said. And to expand on that, anyone who enjoys mock draft stuff, because, you know, as me and Aidan are going to start running this football show, football's not happening. So we're going to be doing a lot of mocks and a lot of off-season talk, which is, you know what, as a big fan, it's almost just as exciting as when football's happening. When you start getting into talent pools and player pools and the draft, it is really fun.
Honestly, I'm such a nerd that I enjoy the NFL draft more than the Super Bowl. Yeah. I genuinely enjoy watching it more than the Super Bowl.
And you know what, man? Let's not, discredit the fact that may be because you're a Giants fan as well, and you have a high pick every year.
That's true. That's true. I knew where that was going.
No, but absolutely, I agree with you. So please, if you enjoy this mock draft 1.0, like Aidan said, there's going to be lots more coming. So, throw us some suggestions. If there's a team if you comment, you will be one of the only commenters. So if you comment and say, hey, I want to see my team, we'll do it. We'll do it 100%. So
for sure.
Comment if you're just one of the, 5 guys that could maybe comment on this video, do it because we can do your team. But anyway, enough of that.
Yeah.
We're going to go back and forth on the picks here. So Aidan's going to do 1, then 2, then 3, vice versa. And he's going to pick for his Giants. I'm going to pick for my Packers, regardless of the order. But Aidan, you're starting us off with, I think the most obvious pick. It's not hard to say this one.
Yeah, you can probably predict this one. Whoever it was that had the number 1 pick was gonna take this guy, and we've known that he was the prodigal son for a long time. So let's not waste too much time on it. You've heard it all before. It's Trevor Lawrence, quarterback, Clemson. Is going to be the first selection in the 2021 NFL draft. I don't think we're going to get much argument from anybody. There might be some argument, as there is every year with the consensus first overall pick, some dissenting opinions just for the
Mhm.
sake of controversy. But I think it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. I don't think there's any way we're going to see something else on draft night.
Completely agree with you. In fact, if I don't want to make this a betting thing, but I would bet anything that I have that Trevor Lawrence goes first overall. Any
Yeah.
talk of Justin Fields is it's just a talking point. That's just to stir something up with the first overall pick. Trevor Lawrence is going first overall, so yeah, let's not spend too much more time on that. The second pick is the New York Jets, and so this one is interesting because the Jets. This is after the first pick. Now things are interesting. There's a few ways they could go here. There's one way that I think they should go here, and that's what I'm going to pick them to do. But there is talk within their camp and within Jets communities that sometimes, like, some guys want to stick with Sam and they want them to draft Devonta Smith here. There's talk of drafting Penny Sewell to help Sam. There's talk of getting a free agent guy. There's talk of Deshaun Watson. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. But I think when you have the second overall pick, you have to draft for the future and to win. And I think they're going to take Zach Wilson, QB, at a BYU. This is another one of those ones that it's kind of becoming a little consensus. I think it's kind of hard not to pick this guy here. So do you have any thoughts about the Zach Wilson at 2?
None, other than I thought you were going to go with Justin Fields. But I think you absolutely made the right pick. Like you said, as people are sort of diving into Zach Wilson tape.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're kind of realizing that he is the number 2 quarterback in this draft. And honestly, if you watch him play, it's pretty hard to argue that in most draft classes where there wasn't, a generational quarterback talent like that only comes around every once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
Zach Wilson would be the number 1 pick. And so I think if the Jets are sitting here at number 2 and they pass on Zach Wilson to take a skill player or an offensive lineman, I think that's pretty crazy. And I would feel really sorry for Jets fans. As much as they might like Sam Darnold and want to stick with him, it's the wrong decision. It's absolutely the correct thing to do is to just take Zach Wilson. And even if he turns out to be shitty, I think you still made the right decision in the moment. So I don't think there's another way. And we'll get to it when the third quarterback comes off the board. We'll talk a little bit about him, because there is some talk about who the number 2 quarterback is. But for now, the Dolphins are on the clock, and it's my turn to make the selection. And for this one, I mean, so far it's been pretty easy. I think the top 3 picks at the absolute least, assuming the Dolphins stick with Tua, which I think they should give him another year. I think this one's pretty easy. I'm going to go with Penny Sewell, offensive tackle out of Oregon. I just think it makes so much sense. I mean, part of Tua's game is so conducive to sitting behind an offensive line. He can obviously move in the pocket, but I mean, you want to protect him. He's had some injuries in his past. I just think you want to protect your quarterback and give him a legitimate chance to succeed. Because let's face it, the Dolphins were better than expected last year, but they weren't some great offense or anything. So protect Tua. They have another first-round pick, which we'll see what they do with that. But I think if they want to address some weapons on the offense to help Tua out even more, I think that would be a good decision. But as far as the player himself, Penny Sewell, obviously there was that great offensive tackle class last year, with the top 4 guys being all projecting as franchise offensive tackles. Penny Sewell, I mean, even since then, it was pretty much known that he was better than any of them, at least in college, and better at a young age. Last year, I mean, obviously he didn't play this year. He opted out of the season for COVID concerns, but it's not like he needed to play. We saw enough in his 19-year-old season to know that he was going to be, at the absolute least, he projects as a very solid starting tackle, but his athletic traits tell you his upside is through the roof, and he could be one of the best offensive tackles in the league almost right away.
Absolutely, man. And there are people who, lots of people actually have Penny Sewell as their number 1 overall talented player in this entire class. That's above.
I don't blame them.
So
I don't blame them.
Obviously, when you put positional value into that. Like, you can't say that Trevor Lawrence
Yeah.
is just the number, but you get the precipice of what I'm saying is that Penny
Yeah.
Sewell's so good that they're saying that he, at his respective position, provides a bigger like scale of talent than what Trevor Lawrence provides at his. So it's crazy to think that
Yeah.
a guy this good would fall past 3. I think if the Dolphins don't take him here, I think they're making a mistake.
I think it is a big mistake, and part of the reason why is, I mean, we've said enough about Penei Sewell and how good he is. I don't see a scenario where he's not at least really good. But in any case, there's a lot of good receiver talent in this draft, and that's probably Miami's second biggest need. You can wait, and especially because they have a second first-round pick,
Yep.
you don't need to, as good as the top receivers in this draft are, you don't need to push that need. Just take the tackle, move Robert Hunt over to guard, slide Austin Jackson to right tackle, and you're building a good young offensive line. It's a no-brainer to me. Unless obviously if the Dolphins feel they need to move on at quarterback, I don't think that's a crazy decision. I don't think they should yet, but I think that's the only other way, or a trade down. I think that's the only 2 ways you could justify not taking Penei Sewell here.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think they're going to take him here. I don't think that taking a quarterback is the right decision. You just took one last year with pretty much the same capital you'd be taking this guy with. So you can't do that back-to-back years when you had a good season. So yeah, Penei Sewell's the guy. So the next pick, the Atlanta Falcons are on the clock. And this is now officially where the draft kind of gets interesting. I know I said that for number 2, but it's true that after those top 3 guys, now you're looking at some decisions to be made by these teams. And the Falcons have some questions going into this offseason. One of them being at QB, and I'll preface this right now. I'm not taking a QB here for them.
Interesting.
So listen, I think that Matt Ryan it's time to take a QB, but do I think they will take a QB? I don't think they will take a QB. I think this is the Falcons move more than I think who's the best player available right here. That's kind of what I'm interpreting this as with this pick.
Okay.
They've got a lot of needs, no doubt. But I think they're gonna take Patrick Surtain II, a cornerback from Alabama.
Wow, interesting.
With the 4th overall pick, and I think he's going to be one of those players that night originally people go, holy cow, like the Falcons didn't take a QB. But I think
what that reminds me of? Denzel Ward a few years ago at 4.
Yep.
Remember that huge, everybody expected the Browns to go with Bradley Chubb.
Yep.
That just gave me Denzel Ward flashbacks. And you know what? That worked out for the Browns. Like Denzel Ward is a really good corner.
And you need good corner. Like look at how the Falcons secondary, like it's not incredibly good. So they're going to need
no.
a guy back
I mean,
there.
they have some young guys, but I mean, with the secondary, I think so. Let me just talk about with the secondary, you want to always be adding talent. You don't want to be like, oh, we drafted a corner 2 years ago in Isaiah Oliver, and even though he kind of sucks, or at least he sucked so far, we're just going to stick with him. No, if you want to be good in the secondary at any position, but especially in the secondary, you have to attack it by consistently adding pieces if it's not satisfactory yet.
Exactly.
I think it's a great decision from a process standpoint. The only thing that I think is I wouldn't do this because when you have a chance to take a quarterback as good as Justin Fields, I think you absolutely have to do it. I've never been a big Matt Ryan guy. I mean, I liked him in his MVP season, but I think after that, he's kind of shown that was more of an outlier than anything. And I think this is a perfect situation for Justin Fields to come in and sit behind Matt Ryan for a year or 2 and kind of iron out some of the things that Justin Fields, the reason why he's not the number 2 pick as he was projected coming in to last year's college football season. Some of the, I mean, he's accurate. Obviously, he's got the arm talent. He's got all the physical tools. He's a really good athlete. It's just some of the inconsistencies that we saw, like in the Northwestern game
and
last year.
That's exactly it with Justin Fields. And when one of these teams takes him, I have thoughts about him too. I think he's a great player, but I think that I don't know. Did my audio just mess up there or no?
Nope, I heard you.
Okay, cool. Patrick Surtain, he's one of my favorite. He is my favorite corner in the class.
Mine too.
And he's big, he's fast, he's long. He can really do everything they need, and I believe he can turn into a top tier cornerback. So, I mean, this pick to me isn't exactly what I would do. I would draft a quarterback, but what I think the Falcons will do with Matt Ryan still there is draft this guy. And if they were a team with a bit of a younger QB and less of a question, this pick wouldn't have as many questions to it, right? So that's my pick here.
No, I think it's a great fit, like a great it makes a lot of sense. It just is. I agree with you. And you know what? I don't think it's crazy to say the Falcons would not draft a quarterback. I could definitely see that. They're not like the most forward-thinking organization. I don't know if they will recognize that it's probably time to move off of Matt Ryan soon and start rebuilding around a young QB. I can't stress enough that I think that is absolutely the right decision to take Justin Fields here.
Yeah.
But I think if you're not going to take Justin Fields, take a position of value. Or I mean, realistically, if they were going to do this, they would probably trade down. But we're not doing trades in this mock draft because somebody would want to come up and take Justin Fields. But in any case, I think we've talked about it enough. Patrick Surtain, like you said, great player, my favorite corner in the draft over Caleb Farley, who a lot of people seem to have as their number one cornerback. Sorry. Obviously, there's speed concerns with Patrick Surtain, but I think everything else that he does with his size, his technique, his length, putting him in. I don't know what the Falcons are gonna. Did they retain Raheem Morris? I'm not 100% sure if they did or not.
I'm not 100% sure either.
And anyways, in the Seattle 3 scheme, he's a great fit that the Falcons did run under Dan Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, great player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think taking him at a high position of value, it was either him or a receiver. But if you're not taking a quarterback, and I think that was a great pick if the Falcons decide to not go QB.
Yeah, and it's funny, man. Look at our first 4 picks here. It's all positions of actual value in the NFL. They're all.
We'll see if that happens.
They're all positions that really matter when it comes down to it. And having that top tier corner is, I mean, look at Jair Alexander and how he's turned out for the Pack and just taking a first round corner. It can happen with a lot of teams. Marlon Humphrey, and I think Patrick Surtain has that capability.
Just look at DeAndre Baker. I mean,
yeah. Exactly. DeAndre Baker, the new Chiefs CB1. But anyway, you're on the clock now. The Bengals choice here. So
to me, oh man, I'm if I'm the Bengals, I mean, if I'm not getting Penei Sewell, I know who I'm taking, and that's Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU. Taking the first receiver off the board, my first receiver, my number 1 ranked receiver, pairing him back up with his college quarterback Joe Burrow when he broke records. To me, I mean, the fit makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you have obviously a couple good receivers already there, and Tyler Boyd in the slot, and then T. Higgins on the other side. AJ Green is hitting free agency. Obviously, it looked like he was declining a little bit because of age. So you get a replacement here. I don't think you could get a better replacement.
No.
Stylistically, he's not like AJ Green. He's not that big, big body contested catch guy. But he is a fantastic receiver.
Yep.
Obviously, Devontae Smith, Heisman winner, not going to discount what he did this past season. But let's be honest, Jamar Chase was putting up those numbers a couple years younger.
Exactly.
In 2019. So and not to mention he was doing it against guys in the SEC who went to the NFL and had success.
Yep.
Already.
AJ Terrell is one of those corners that he went against. There was another one too. His name escapes me, but a top.
Well, all the Alabama corners.
No, exactly, man. You are salivating if you're the Bengals at this position. Get Jamar Chase for your Joe Burrow. Oh my God! Like from a prospect perspective, you can argue that Jamar Chase is higher ranked as a prospect than CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, all these guys that came in.
I would argue that he is. I mean, his season with Joe Burrow was just outstanding.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
And you're probably making the other thing is you're making Burrow happy. And I mean, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals after what happened last year, you got him killed behind that offensive line. And obviously, offensive line is something you're going to need to address in free agency and in the draft. Probably with the next pick. The Bengals should be looking to do that. It is a deep offensive line class. But in any case, you're making your quarterback happy, pairing him up with a guy we've seen him have chemistry with, and we've seen him put up insane numbers in college.
Absolutely.
Getting him a legitimate number 1, which he didn't have last season. I do like T. Higgins, but I think he projects better in a number 2 role. And those weapons that you're giving Burrow with Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, I mean, look out. I mean, if you get him an offensive line, he's going to be dissecting those defenses in the AFC North. I don't think you can make a better fit there.
No, absolutely agree with you, man. And yeah, it's funny because Jamar Chase is also my wide receiver one, but he's not my number one offensive player in this class in terms of potential of what they could bring to the table. But
You're
I'm
talking
on
about
the table
besides quarterback?
besides quarterback. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just like weapon. So I'm on the clock now with the Eagles at 6, and this one is a little tricky because the Eagles have here, let me scroll up so we can see the actual Eagles logo. There it is. The Eagles have some team needs, as you can see here. They're not wrong to have receiver, tight end, cornerback, linebacker, QB. There's a lot of questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, look at who's sitting on the board QB wise. It's pretty crazy. The fact that he's still here, but the Eagles cannot take him. There's way too much going on with Wentz and Hurts and all that shit. They can't bother to take a QB, and that's why I think they're just going to do something that no team has done in 15 years, actually. When I was mocking this up, no team has ever gone back-to-back receiver in the first round in 15 years. I think I saw that stat.
Wow,
Pretty
that's
crazy.
amazing. I think that's going to start changing pretty soon.
Absolutely. And it's going to
With the
change
talent we're
here
seeing.
with the Eagles taking Devonta Smith. I just think this is a pick where the Eagles, because they have their quarterback and their offensive line has some questions, but it's not god awful, that you're taking the Heisman winner at 6. You're taking a guy that's a game breaker, a game changer, a guy for your future quarterback, whoever they decide that to be. That's an internal issue they need to figure out first. But you add Devonta Smith to this team, and he's automatically going to improve your offense and add weapons for your young quarterback. So
yeah, I don't think you can argue with that at all. Obviously Devonta Smith, we don't need to tell you what kind of numbers he was putting up. Heisman Trophy winner this past season. I think that's probably the right pick. When I'm going through this, I'm looking at corner for sure. Obviously, if Justin Fields was there, I think I would just draft Justin Fields. I don't think realistically if this were happening, if we could do trades, I think what would have happened is the Falcons would have traded back and somebody would have traded up to take Justin Fields. But in any case, let's say Justin Fields isn't there. I think you're either going with Devonta Smith or a corner. Obviously, both our top corner in Patrick Surtain is off the board.
Yeah.
The only reason why I say that, I think I would lean corner, is because of the personnel on the roster. They have Darius Slay. Obviously, he was not that great last season.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't,
and he's getting older.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have a lot of free agents, and honestly, those guys weren't very good to begin with. Like you were saying, they do have Jalen Reagor still on the roster, who they took in the first round. I'm not a big Jalen Reagor guy, but I mean, if you're going to look at him, and like they have some other guys too, like they still are going to have Greg Ward, Travis Fulgham. And you don't want to go into a season relying on those guys, but I'm just saying, if you're looking at the two positions, you might lean corner, but you can't be faulted for taking Devonta.
And has this not? Sorry to interrupt, but has this not just been the problem with the Eagles for a while, that they just can never have the healthy receiving core and a proper receiving core to move the ball down the field? And to me here, it's like you're taking the best, maybe not the best player available. That's not an accurate statement, but you're taking one of the best players available at a position that you need. And Jalen Reagor, let's just be honest, he hasn't shown that he's going to be that outside X receiver number one guy. You've got to just take that guy. You've got to just take that guy who's just hopefully can break the game and open some things up for your offense and bring some excitement to Philadelphia offensively. I think it's kind of as simple as that. But the Lions are on the clock.
At all. So Lions are on the clock here with me making the pick. At this point, like I said, I think Justin Fields would probably be off the board at this point. But in our situation where there's no trades, he's still on the board. And so that is going to be my pick here for the Detroit Lions.
Great pick.
They traded their franchise QB, obviously, to the LA Rams. They have Jared Goff sitting there, but I don't think anyone is fooling themselves into thinking Jared Goff is the future. No. I think he makes for a solid bridge where Justin Fields can sit behind him for a little bit, kind of just adapt to the NFL, maybe, get some NFL coaching and kind of, pan out those, some of his weaknesses. But I think if Justin Fields wasn't here, I might go with a defensive player like Micah Parsons, the linebacker, and obviously, I don't need to tell you, the Lions defense was not good last year. And I think bringing in a new front office, new coaching staff, they might want to get that kind of jack of all trades in the middle of the field. He can rush the passer, he can cover. But with Justin Fields sitting here, you have a chance to take somebody who could be your quarterback of the future, and not just your quarterback of the future, but a really good quarterback based on what he's shown in college. Deadly accurate. He's got that arm talent. He's athletic and mobile. He doesn't really know how to. He's kind of reminds me of some of these guys who've come into the league who are athletically gifted, but they don't really know how to use their athletic gifts.
Yes.
Kind of maybe like Marcus Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
He has a bigger arm than Marcus Mariota, but Marcus Mariota's biggest problem was always he just didn't really. He was kind of like a baby deer type.
Yeah.
Like he didn't really know what he was doing. That's kind of Justin Fields right now, and I think that's what he would look like in the NFL if you just slotted him right in. So sit behind Jared Goff, learn for a year, maybe. I wouldn't really want to sit him for 2 years.
No.
I think it's just it makes too much sense.
Oh, absolutely, man. I couldn't have said it better. And like, if you're Detroit right now, you're salivating at the opportunity to get him at 7. I completely agree that in this, we're not doing trades right now. We can do one with trades later, but for this one, we're just going by the board. And this is how the board shook out. And it's not crazy in a lot of mocks that I've looked at just, in my spare time for, entertainment. Justin Fields does fall in some mocks. Me and you both think that he should be going higher than where we have him here at 7. But people are projecting him to fall down. I've even seen him go down to 15 to the Patriots. So, like, it's not crazy to think that he falls into this out of the top 5 range just based on how talented this class really is, because you have to lock the top 3 almost and then work, within that next 10 picks to see where he falls out. So anyway, Carolina is on the clock, and they're hitting their Matt Rule just punched his desk because he was hoping that Justin Fields would fall to him there because he's going to go QB this year. The Panthers have some concerns, tackle being one of them. And if it wasn't going to be the guy that I'm going to pick, which is Trey Lance out of North Dakota State for the Panthers, it would be Rashawn Slater. So those are the 2 guys that I kind of have in this scenario here for them. But to me, the quarterback is going to be picked, and it's Trey Lance, North Dakota State. I mean, what can I say about this guy that film rooms haven't said? He is the unpolished guy coming out of this draft, and he's that big arm talent, exciting, I've seen people say that he's the most actually talented, other than Trevor Lawrence, QB in the class. But he needs to refine those skills more. He needs to become a better overall quarterback, a better field general, a better, improviser. It's all the other things. It's not the physical gifts. Those aren't the questions. So, man, I have them taking Trey Lance here. I mean, Bridgewater, he's a bridge, no pun intended. He's a bridge quarterback. And Trey Lance is the kind of guy that you can put into a good system, which I think Carolina is a good system now with Matt Rule and kind of what they got going on there. They can develop this guy into something pretty exciting. So that's my pick here at 7 or 8. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that was really well said. I've kind of seen this in the tea leaves for a long time. It makes a lot of sense for him to just go and sit behind Bridgewater. I mean, they're stuck with that contract that their old GM
put them into, which is
gave Teddy Bridgewater, which it's unfortunate, but I definitely see them going with Trey Lance here. I couldn't really say much more about him than you said. Little raw, but he's got those physical tools. I think that's going there with the offensive coordinator Joe Brady and all those weapons makes a ton of sense.
And can I add one thing too before we go to the Broncos pick? It's that look at some of the raw big guys that have come out of the NFL in a few past years. Look at Josh Allen. Look at Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
These are guys that were said.
Even Mahomes.
Mahomes. Look at the arm talent, but they need to improve in a lot of other areas. And it's crazy because you take out a few quarterback names out of this class, and Trey Lance is like, you're looking at he is a top 10 pick, but you're looking at a top guy here. But it's just unreal the amount of talent. Like, look at our top 8 picks here. Like, look at the talent just dripping off these top 8 picks. It's not Trey Lance's fault by any means that he falls down to 8 here. And there's nothing, wrong with that. It's just you're dealing in a class that's so just good that you're not going to be that high. But I like Trey Lance. I'm not a Trey Lance disbeliever. Trey Lance at 8 to the Carolina Panthers.
All right. I'm on the clock here with the Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos are definitely a candidate to acquire a quarterback. I think they would I don't know. It's hard to say. I think they have some belief that Drew Lock can work it out. I'm not one of those people that is on that
So
wave, but
before before we go into the next thing you're going to say, the quarterback situation in Denver, I agree with you that I think that they think that Drew Lock can work it out. I am not one of those believers, but I think, and I want to know your opinion on it before we make the pick.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to stick with Drew Lock for the upcoming season? I believe they will, because I believe that they think that if they surround him with enough help, that he can make it work, at least for another year.
Let's put it this way. I think Drew Lock will be on the roster one way or another. And it's one specific reason why I think this, and it's because they were in the market to trade for Matt Stafford before he went to the Rams. And I'm not sure who reported this. I heard this on the PFF NFL podcast. I don't think they gave us a source, but I trust what they were saying. Basically, what happened was the Broncos were right on the doorstep of acquiring Matthew Stafford, and the Detroit Lions asked for Drew Lock, because no matter what they were going to do, they wanted a quarterback to come back in the trade so that they could just kind of have a guy there with experience. And the Broncos said no, and they killed the deal. Why they would do that, I don't know. After trying to acquire Matthew Stafford, who would obviously start, they clearly have some belief that he has some talent in there. But
I haven't why did they believe this that there's talent here? Because it's like, what has Drew Lock really done to prove that he has this?
I think what it is what we were just talking about with why the Panthers went with Trey Lance is, in recent years, a lot of these raw, guys that have a lot of problems but have all the physical talent have started working out, and the Broncos see that they have one of those guys. I mean, I think Drew Lock is on the lower end of that, but he definitely has a huge arm, and he can move. I think the Broncos are seeing like Josh Allen work out, and they're like, oh, the Bills didn't give up on Josh Allen. Maybe we should do the same. Maybe we should do the same, because they don't want to see him go somewhere else and figure it out, which I think is a terrible way of planning, because Josh Allen is a massive outlier. Exactly. I know these guys are working out, but usually the guys that work out, they work out in at least their first 2 years. It's pretty clear what they're going to be. That's kind of unfair, but Josh Allen going from looking basically like
NFL, right?
What I'm saying is Josh Allen going from one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL to magically really good, top 5 quarterback this past season, is not something that you can just count on happening because you've seen it happen with him. That's pretty rare for that to happen.
No, I agree. And so, I think we would at least, this is just a comparison that popped in my head right now, but Drew Lock is closer to a Jared Stidham than he is a Trey Lance. So, I mean, they're kidding themselves if they think that he's going to really turn it around. Truthfully, I believe that. Maybe
I agree
on Drew Lock, but they are kidding themselves if they think that Drew Lock is going to take the step this season, next season, however many seasons they give him. They're not. I mean, they better build a damn good roster through the draft if they're not going to take a QB to kind of make up for their holes. But sorry.
Yeah, I mean, they have a good roster. I'll make the pick here in just a second, and I just want to say they have a good roster, good enough where I thought Matthew Stafford was the best landing spot was with the Broncos because of those receivers, and they have a pretty solid O-line. So I don't know, a quarterback coming in that's better than Drew Lock would make a big difference for this team. But we'll see what they actually decide to do. Obviously, the talent at quarterback is not necessarily here for the Broncos to make that the pick. So what I'm going to do is, they really need a corner, especially after cutting AJ Bouye.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely thinking about that. But at the same time, I'm seeing Micah Parsons there, and he's probably there's a couple other guys, but I think he's definitely a top 3 in terms of talent player left on the board. And the Broncos have a need at linebacker, and they also have a need at edge with, Bradley Chubb not really showing too many things, and Von Miller getting a little bit older. And Micah Parsons can and has shown, has made it clear that he can play edge, at least verbally.
And
I think he can with his athleticism.
How Broncos of a pick is it to take Micah Parsons here? It's such a Broncos pick. You get that great Penn State linebacker who's aggressive off the corner. That's such a Broncos move here if they're not going to take the quarterback.
I think so too. It's tough here because I agree it is a very Broncos pick, but at the same time, I do think the smart pick would be to go with Caleb Farley because the talent at linebacker, I do like some of those some of these later round
Mhm.
guys, but the talent at corner is pretty top heavy.
Yeah, absolutely.
They need a guy to start next year. They need to
Mhm.
find that somehow because they don't have anyone on the roster that you feel
Yeah,
good about going into next season.
yeah.
So I'm kind of talking myself into it here. I'm going to take Caleb Farley here. Um, just because, I mean, he can come in and start right away and give you, a very nice baseline at corner, which is what the Broncos need. And he can obviously, he's very talented. Um, he can develop later on and become a really good corner for them.
I completely agree.
Obviously he's another guy that didn't play in 2020. He opted
Mhm.
out. But at Virginia Tech in 2019, he was fantastic. Really sticky in coverage. Uh, Not much else to say. I mean,
He's
the
kind of
fit is just too
yeah,
good. It just makes too much sense with the Broncos to where like the need is there, the talent is there. You would like to have Micah Parsons, but the smart thing is just to take the corner, who's the more valuable position, A,
yeah.
and the much bigger need, B. And
And he's a complete player, man, too.
yeah,
Like
he is.
he's as close to a complete corner as you can find in this class. People have him over Patrick Surtain as their number one corner. Me and you don't, but some people do. So, like I agree with you, man. They need it, with especially cutting AJ Boye and like moving
Yeah.
forward with not having corners. You got to at least be able to defend the touchdowns if you're not going to be scoring them with your shitty quarterback. So like they need to go one way or another. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
Caleb Fairley is a good pick out of Virginia
If you're
Tech.
going in with Michael Ojemudia as your number one corner,
Yeah,
you're going to have some problems. And the other thing that made me make this pick is there's not a lot of great corners in free agency.
yeah,
Um, like at the very least, they have a lot of question marks. Like William Jackson is probably the best one. And you would feel pretty good about him going in as your number one corner. Like you wouldn't be like, oh, we're screwed. But you at the same time, there's a chance that you are screwed. So
yeah.
I think getting Caleb Fairley just makes way too much sense.
Absolutely, man. And they need that help back there in a division when you're going against the Chargers and the Chiefs for, ever. So
Yeah,
for when two teams that can explode on offense, you need a guy
another
back there
great
that
point.
can kind of hold his own. So the
And
Cowboys are on the clock. Oh,
well, yeah,
sorry.
I was just gonna say the other thing is it feels good to snipe the Cowboys as well. So I'll say that.
Yeah, exactly. Because they could have used him. And
Yeah.
actually, if you didn't take Caleb Fairley here, that would have been my pick for the Cowboys here. But rather than doing that, I'm going to take Rashawn Slater, the tackle out of Northwestern.
Mm,
I think this one kind of it doesn't explain itself fully, but I mean, this guy is an incredibly good offensive tackle. The studies that I've done into him have said that he is a more like how do you even word this? Like a more refined player at his position in terms of
yeah.
playing tackle than Penny Sewell is. But Penny Sewell has the physical traits that you can train into just being just like a monster human,
Yeah.
where Sean Slater kind of lacks that. So you can never go wrong, in my opinion, with picking an offensive tackle, especially a very highly touted one, because they're such a valuable position and every team needs them. And when you're moving forward with no matter who your quarterback is, you need to protect that guy. So you
Yep.
get a franchise tackle here, hopefully in Rashawn Slater at 10th overall, that can really help the Cowboys continue to be the team they think they are in this prideful organization.
Yeah, I think that was really well said in terms of Rashawn Slater, the player. I just want to add two things.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, this is a very the Cowboys might want to take a flashier player, you might think, and I think they, deep down they want to, but you got to remember they kind of made their bread and butter taking offensive linemen in the first round.
Exactly, bro.
Like earlier when they obviously those guys are getting older now, and that's
Zach
part of the
Martin,
reason why
Tyron
you
Smith.
make this pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, and Travis Frederick all went in the first round. And there were some people there was some dissent against those picks at the time saying, "Oh, the Cowboys should have went here, they should have went there." And obviously, if they were to redo it, they wouldn't change a thing. Those guys were probably all three at one point the best at their respective positions.
Absolutely.
So there's that. And then the other thing is that Rashawn Slater, as a player, has position flexibility. He can not only play tackle, which if you're doing that, you would probably be, at least training him behind Tyron Smith, who is getting a little bit older and injuries are catching up to him. But at the same time, he can play guard as well. So if you're not happy with Connor Williams across from Zach Martin, which there's no, I mean, he's not terrible, but he's not great. You can slide him in there too.
Exactly, man. And to add to that as well, it's like you can play him in that guard position there and have Tyron beside him there at left tackle.
Yeah.
And that will make him a better left tackle. He'll be in the
Yeah.
line, he'll be learning the signals, he'll be learning the movements, the gaps, all that stuff. And who's a better teacher to bring in right now than Tyron Smith, their franchise tackle that they've had for the last, years and years.
Yep.
Rashawn Slater can come in and he can be that next cornerstone step at the offensive line position.
Yeah. Okay, so it's my pick here with my favorite team, the New York Football Giants. They're on the clock here at 11. And I kind of like the way, if I'm the Giants, I love the way that this has shaped up for me. I think, you look at some of their needs there, a lot of them are very accurate, but I think their biggest need in terms of they just need an influx of talent here is at the playmaker position, whether that's a wide receiver, whether that's tight end. They just need to bring in guys who can be dynamic down the field and catch the ball. They have a lot of solid players there, like Sterling Shepard, solid. Darius Slayton, very solid. But you need a number one go-to guy that you can rely on down the field to be making plays, catching touchdowns, which they haven't had since they traded away Odell Beckham Jr. There is a chance that they go this route in free agency. There's obviously a lot of good wide receivers available in free agency. Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay in particular, he would be a really nice fit here. But even if they do that, which with their cap situation and a couple impending free agents on the defensive line, it's definitely risky to bank on that happening.
Mm-hmm.
But even if they do manage to secure one of those guys, I think adding another one will never hurt. Having too many playmakers. Do you think the Chiefs or the Chiefs or the Buccaneers were thinking, man, we have just too many good wide receivers out here. We should
many good players. Weird having too many good players promote success, but
I really doubt the two Super Bowl teams were thinking they have too much talent at playmaker. So here, I mean, for me, it's between Jalen Waddle and Kyle Pitts. I was definitely out on Kyle Pitts for a long time for the Giants, but diving into his tape and doing a little bit of research on him as a prospect, he is a fantastic player. And more importantly, I think you kind of hedge your bets here with Evan Engram. He obviously was not good last year, despite making the Pro Bowl. He probably single-handedly lost, 3 games for the Giants that I can think of, probably more, with the amount of turnovers that he was responsible for. So getting Kyle Pitts would be really nice, just to kind of, because Evan Engram's going to be a free agent in a couple of years anyways. But even just to have a 2 tight end attack with those 2 guys, with the athleticism that they bring, would be really nice. And I think that would make even more sense if they do get a receiver in free agency. But here, if I'm looking at the board, positional value wise and need wise, we don't know what the Giants are going to do in free agency. I think Jalen Waddle, best player available, no question. And at the biggest position of need, makes way too much sense to pass on. I'm going with Jalen Waddle here from Alabama. Just to say a couple things about the player before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Devontae Smith had that big season, but before Jalen Waddle went down with, I believe it was a leg injury, he was outproducing Devontae Smith in that offense. So there's that. First of all, his production wise, really outstanding. His speed is next level. Which obviously has drawn some comparisons to Henry Ruggs, who wasn't that great. But the big difference between Henry Ruggs and Jalen Waddle is, number one, production. Henry Ruggs never produced at Alabama. So there's that. That's obviously a red flag for Henry Ruggs. But number 2, Jalen Waddle is way more dynamic than Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs was basically just a track athlete where he had straight line speed. And that's about it. But Jalen Waddle moving laterally, his quickness, his route running is not even on Henry Ruggs' level. So that's why for me, Jalen Waddle is actually above Devontae Smith on my personal draft board, because Devontae Smith is really good, but I'm betting on those athletic traits and those skills that Jalen Waddle has. I mean, he was the punt returner for Alabama too. And if you watch some of those plays, I mean, he had some touchdowns on punt returns that were outstanding.
This guy's footwork and moves running up the field is unbelievable.
I mean, you never want to make a kind of comparison to a player in the NFL that's so good and so unique. But I'm telling you, he looks like Tyreek Hill out there. I don't know if he's got Tyreek Hill's his level of speed, but his contested catchability at his size is another thing that Tyreek Hill brings to the table that makes him so unique is that he's short and small,
Hmm.
but at the same time, he can get those jump balls and make those contested catches, which is another thing that Jalen Waddle showed on his tape. So I mean, if you want to, if you want to make a pick that, if you want to get a freak athlete with genuine talent that's already NFL ready, I mean, the only concern that you would have is injuries. But any player can get hurt. I'm not shying away from a pick because he might get hurt at some point. Like anybody could get hurt. So
Yeah.
it makes way too much sense. Jalen Waddle, best player on the board, biggest need, adding a new element to the Giants offense. I would be ecstatic if this was the pick for my favorite team.
And man, like, I didn't want to hop in there because I know
No,
it's
go
just
ahead.
fun to talk about Jalen Waddle and how exciting he could be on the Giants. And that really at this point for the Giants, it's between Waddle and Pitts. And that's just preference at that point, right? Like, who do you think is going to be better? Who do you prefer better for your team? We can get to this player actually. I'll save my talk about this other player for when we get to him later. But anyway, the number 12, the San Francisco 49ers are here. So this is a situation actually where I think they trade down. So I don't think they'll make this pick in real life. But if they had to, as you can see right here, it says cornerback is their biggest need. And I agree with that. When I was looking into this pick and kind of figuring out what I think they should draft here, it's secondary. It's secondary all day. So there's a guy a little bit further down. This is the first time we've had to really scroll out of the top 10. But J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, I think is their guy here at 12. I think you just take a position of need. Absolutely. 100%. And the other guys that are here, like this is why I think they're going to trade down, at least in our situation. You look at guys like Kyle Pitts, Micah Parsons, Christian Darrisaw, all these other guys that are really good players that they already have those positions kind of figured out in San Francisco, right? Like they're not going to draft a tight end to put beside Kittle. They don't really need that. They're not going to draft You think they would?
Here's what I'll say. This is why I disagree with this pick. I wouldn't reach for need here. I know you're saying they would trade down, and that makes a lot of sense. It does. If they really are dead set on cornerback, it makes sense to trade down because J.C. Horn is a bit of a reach here. But I honestly think that I don't think it's crazy to take Kyle Pitts here. With how the 49ers run their offense, he would just basically slide right in. I mean, they use their other tight ends a little bit too. But if you get Kyle Pitts in there across from George Kittle, like the fear that would strike in other offenses, Kyle Shanahan is obviously probably one of the best offensive minds in the league. There's no question about that. He would find a way to use those two together. And the other thing is that Kyle Pitts has the ability to split out wide. He can play in the slot. Like he's versatile. So is George Kittle. They could find a way to use those both on the field with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Man, I know, that's a scary offense.
Right? And that's why I think I think they're trading. Like I'm prefacing this pick by saying I don't think that this pick will happen at 12. Because I think they can just trade down and get more assets and then just be better overall. But J.C. Horn is kind of this guy that I don't think I think he's a pretty good player, actually. He's in my top 3 corners. He's number 3. But that being said, they need him. They need this position. We're not doing trades in this mock. I just think that, they already have weapons on offense. They already have, a good pass rush because they've invested so much in that through the draft. You can't take Micah Parsons. But this kind of goes against, now that I'm looking at the pick J.C. Horn there, it goes against kind of what I believe in draft-wise, that you don't pick for need. But I think that's what I'm going to make the Niners do here because I just think they're going to trade down. And so I'm going to take their biggest position of need.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. The other thing I will say before we move on is that I think the other thing, I could see that happening, but I think the other thing I could see happening is if they don't re-sign Trent Williams, who's an impending free agent. He was one of the best tackles in the league last year. You could see them go offensive tackle. You could see them stick and pick, or you could see them trade down and take one of the many good offensive tackles that's on the board. So I'll say that, but I don't think J.C. Horn is crazy with Sherman and Verrett, I believe, both free agents. So with that being said, let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers, who are picking here at number 13. And for me, I'm not going to – I think it's really important to protect Herbert. Their offensive line, again, despite it looking a lot better on paper, was terrible last year. It feels like they can
Yeah.
never get that figured out. So picking an offensive tackle here would be really nice. But there are also a lot of good offensive tackles available in free agency. I could see them signing a Trent Williams or a Taylor Moton if they hit free agency. And to me, I think that would mean letting Hunter Henry walk, who's been kind of on and off the field with injuries. And if that happens, which I think he's been incredibly inconsistent, if that happens, I'm going with Kyle Pitts here. Get Herbert another legitimate weapon. He was making guys like Jalen Guyton and Teron Johnson look like elite receivers last year.
Let's gush about Kyle Pitts for a second.
You get him a legitimate weapon like Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
Good Lord. If there was one thing I took away from preparing for this video and researching this first round of talent here, Kyle Pitts is one of those players that, like, I heard about him, right? I heard about him a while before that. I heard about that tight end from Florida. He had this mystique to him. So I was like, okay, it's time for me to sit down and really watch some Kyle Pitts film. Holy shit.
How about that Alabama game, man? Holy shit.
This guy
he's all over the field.
This is Justin Herbert's new best friend.
Yeah.
He's just basically a massive, fast, strong receiver that can break the game open for you. And his catch radius is so good. Oh God, man, like pretty much everything that you can want in a like offensive weapon prospect, whether you want that to be a receiver, tight end, like catching back, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts has all of it. And
he's just a weapon.
He's just a weapon. He's incredibly
in every sense of the word.
Yeah, in every sense of the word. I mean, I love the pick here. I love wherever he goes. He's going to be one of my favorite players to watch this upcoming season because he's so talented that I really am excited to see that transition to the next level.
Me too. Before we move on here, one thing I did want to say, there's this website. I'm sure I've told you about it before, but anybody watching might know about it. It's called playerprofiler.com. And basically what they do is, one of the things they do a lot of great things, but one of the things they do is they have a best comparable player based on production, advanced stats, athleticism metrics, that kind of thing. And it generates a best comparable player to each individual player in the database. So you know who Kyle Pitts' best comparable player is? I won't make you guess, but it's LeBron James. I'm not even kidding. Awesome. It's LeBron James. That's the kind of player you're getting. A lot of people have speculated what LeBron would look like if he came to the NFL. Maybe he would play tight end. Maybe he would play edge.
Yeah.
But if that's what I'm getting with Kyle Pitts, I'm not going to complain if I'm Justin Herbert. I'll just say that.
Couldn't have said it any better, man. Like this guy, he's a monster. We just gushed about him. That's just us being just like draft nerds gushing about this guy because he is truly one of those special athletes that it doesn't matter where he goes, he's going to make an immediate impact. So the Vikings are on the clock here, my least favorite team in the NFL. So I hope they mess this pick up, but I have control of their pick here. And as you can see, I've dabbled into now the offensive tackle category because this is the direction I think they're going to go. There are options here for them, right? I mean, they're not going to draft. They're not in the market to change too much offensively. In my opinion, you have to look on the defensive side of the ball, or you have to look at the O-line. And I think they're going to look at the O-line here. And these tackles, to be completely honest, when you start getting into the Leatherwoods and the Jenkins, like I have seen these guys play. I don't know too much about the disparity in what their kind of quality of a player is. But I did watch some Christian Darrisaw.
Yeah.
Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech. I did watch some of his stuff because I kept seeing his name pop up in mock drafts. And that's the guy that I have the Vikings picking here at 14. It's a safe pick. It's not an exciting pick. It's a safe pick for something that it's an instant contributor to the Vikings O-line, which is, one of the most important positions in the entire game.
Yeah.
So
I think that is, I think if you're going offensive tackle, he is absolutely the right pick. He's just a huge monster on the O-line for Virginia Tech. I think that is the right pick if you're going offensive tackle. And I think offensive tackle is a big need for the Vikings.
Yeah.
I do like Ezra Cleveland a lot, who they drafted in the second round last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could play tackle, but they were playing him at guard last year, and he was good enough to stick there.
Yep.
And the Vikings do have huge needs on the interior of their offensive line.
Yep.
Despite drafting Garrett Bradbury a couple years ago, he's not a great pass blocker, but they're going to stick with him. So you want as much pass protection on the interior as you can get. The Vikings have right tackle figured out with Brian O'Neill, but left tackle is a question mark with Riley Reef.
Yep.
There's been rumors that he is going to be cut for a long time. Yep. He's obviously a little bit older. So getting Darrisaw, I think, is great to keep up that offensive production. Yep. Their defense was not good this year, and I could see them going with somebody on defense like Christian Barmore, the interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yep.
But I think Christian Darrisaw is a great pick and a need, and I think it just makes a lot of sense.
And that's what I had to preface too, but before taking him, like, as you know, you just said it's a need, and he's a great player and he can slot in at a position where they're kind of confused at the moment. Defense is also a good pick here for the Vikings. Yeah. So pretty much anything. They're kind of in the Niners range of, like, we are kind of fortunate to be up here in the top 15 with, you know, our team is far more complete than a lot of other teams in the top 15 are.
Okay.
But
I agree with you there. So, yeah, the New England Patriots are on the clock here at number 15. And, man, this is interesting for the Patriots. There's a lot of picks here. Like, if I'm the Patriots, there's a lot of players sitting here that I would not have expected to make it. In my own, I've gone through the draft on my own, and to me, I thought Mac Jones made a lot of sense here.
Yeah.
Just because he kind of fits. Obviously, I'm not comparing him to Tom Brady, but Tom Brady had a lot of success being in their system what Mac Jones, I think, fits to be. But with the talent sitting on the board, I'm not gonna pass on that, because the Patriots, I mean, you look at their roster, it's getting older. It's not going to be good next year. One way or another, they're not going to win a Super Bowl next year, whether they take Mac Jones or not. He's not moving the needle. If I were them, and I think the Patriots and Bill Belichick are smart enough to know that they don't have to reach on a quarterback if they don't need to. They can wait, or they can get somebody in free agency, or they can wait till next year. And so with that being said, there's a lot of positions here on the defense that I think make a lot of sense. I think Christian Barmore makes a lot of sense. They have a need on the interior defensive line. Some of those guys getting older. Some guys like Deatrick Wise hitting free agency. But I think there are two guys in particular that are a lot better at a lot more valuable positions that I am not going to shy away from passing on. One of them is Kwity Paye on the edge. I think he's probably the best player left on the draft board right now. So I'm tempted to go there, but at the same time, he's not a fantastic scheme fit for what the Patriots like to do. They like to use their guys in like these hybrid roles where sometimes they're rushing the pass, or sometimes they're playing linebacker. Sometimes they're playing in coverage.
Exactly. He's not.
So I'm not going to go.
Not to just echo what you were saying, but
when
you look at Kwity Paye, he's not the traditional Patriots edge rusher in any sense of the word. So like he's far more of like a one trick pony. He's very good at what he does, but the Patriots are more versatile scheme fit guys. I would urge anyone to go look at the Patriots last 3 years and who they've drafted in the first 3 rounds. It's kind of god awful. They haven't made like a great pick. Maybe like you could say Isaiah Wynn is like
Wynn's who came to mind for me.
But they haven't picked a good player in the first 3 rounds of the draft in a very long time. So I urge just to go check that out a little bit, because they're picking pretty high here for like considering how good they've been for the last 18 years. So it's interesting to see what they can do with a higher pick. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And with that kind of checkered draft history, I think they're going to make a pick here that is going to be pretty hard to miss on because he brings that versatility that the Patriots covet. And the player I'm going with is Micah Parsons.
Great pick.
I just think he's just too talented to Belichick not to find a way to use him in a way to maximize his skill set. I think that's a great fit for the Patriots there. They'll find a way to use him to just make him an impact player, which he can be. Linebackers in the past few years drafted highly haven't always been able to make that immediate impact because it's a hard position to play. especially in the modern NFL with such a heavy passing attack. But Micah Parsons and his athletic ability and what he showed at Penn State, I feel confident about that. And like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of guys that opted out this year for the Patriots that will be coming back.
Exactly.
Dante Hightower comes to mind, but those guys are getting up in age. The Patriots are kind of entering a new phase. The dynasty is over. They're going to need to rebuild.
And Micah
pretty
Parsons
soon.
is that great defensive building block that they can kind of like place their defense on, right, to move forward in future years. No, I agree, man.
Fundamental piece.
He is that fundamental piece. And when I was looking, I'm picking here for the Cardinals at 16, and I was hoping you didn't take him because no matter who is on the board, this guy is the best guy left, in my opinion. And so I think that you're mistaking yourself letting him fall past either the Patriots or the Cardinals if he's still even available at any mock that you're doing. But I'm picking for the Cardinals here. And there was two guys that I looked into on the edge kind of extensively before the draft, before we did this video. One was Kwity Paye, and the other one was, like I have in my notes here, Azeez Ojulari. Two guys. Okay. Both of them are exciting players.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to go with Kwity Paye. He's right here. Edge from Michigan. He's a better player in what I observed. The problem with Azeez, I'm going to butcher his last name, so I apologize in advance for that.
Ojulari.
Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah.
He's kind of a one-trick pony a little bit in what he's able to do coming off the edge, where Kwity Paye is a much more like overall kind of well-built fundamental edge rusher. So I would say he's the guy that the Cardinals are going to take here at 16. And he's a great player. He's one of the best left on the board, and they need this position kind of moving forward because they've got a great offense figured out. It's time to look on the defense and how to put some pressure on some of those opposing teams.
Absolutely, man. I think that was the right pick. For me, Kwity Paye is the edge one. There's a couple of guys you can argue. Ojulari is one of them. I was watching him in the college football playoffs. He was making some plays against the Cincinnati left tackle. He was a backup for I can't remember the starter's name, but he was the backup for that guy, and he was getting absolutely cooked by Ojulari. But you're right. He doesn't have the kind of refined skill set that Kwity Paye has shown and developed over the course of his years at Michigan. And I think it makes a lot of sense to me. With Chandler Jones getting up there in age, with Hassan Reddick hitting free agency, with I think Marcus Golden's going to be hitting free agency too. Edge is probably the Cardinals' biggest need, definitely the biggest need on defense. Corner is up there, but need player, probably best player available. He kind of fits the Chandler Jones mold.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I think it just everything kind of the stars kind of aligned there. I don't think there was a better pick.
And to add something as well, it's that like all the corners that I think are worth kind of taking up in this area where you're drafting are already gone. So in my opinion, to take, an incredibly good, as you said, he's your edge one. You can't really go wrong taking the more talented player here, even if, corner is a position of need.
Yeah. You're 100% right there. I don't think there was a better pick to be made there. For now, the Raiders are on the clock, and I'm up making the pick for them.
Yep.
And honestly, I think a lot of the things we could say about the Cardinals in terms of their needs are true for the Raiders. The Raiders defense has been the past few years one of the worst in the NFL. They've kind of taken those picks from the Khalil Mack trades and not really maximized the talent. Not really maximize the talent that could have been with those high picks. Cleveland Farrell, Jonathan Abrams come to mind, and then obviously taking a running back, which I don't agree with. It hasn't really made their team all that much better, especially on defense. So here, I'm looking at their top needs on the board here: edge, interior defensive lineman, linebacker, safety, corner, all true. That's all positions on defense, and they need all positions on defense. But to me, what the Raiders have kind of done that's kind of been shooting themselves in the foot is they've taken a lot of low upside, high floor guys that bring a lot of character, but not much athletic upside to the table. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of been where the Raiders have failed. Jonathan Abram was one of the worst safeties in the league last year. He talks a lot of smack when he makes a big hit, but he's lost in coverage on every play.
Exactly.
Clelin Ferrell, he's a nice guy, but he's not the best pass rusher in the world.
No.
So for me, I want to go the opposite way here, and I want to take Gregory Rousseau, edge defender out of Miami. And the reason why is because what he brings to the table, obviously we didn't see him in 2020, and that more than any other opt-out guy, maybe other than Jamie Newman, has hurt his draft stock quite a bit, because with Gregory Rousseau, we never really saw him win consistently on the edge, and we never really saw him develop pass rush moves, which is obviously really concerning for an edge rusher.
Yeah.
But he is still young, he's still raw, and he has all the talent in the world to develop those skill sets. So that's why I'm taking him here, because he kind of is a complement to what the Raiders have done in the other positions that they've taken the past few years, because of those athletic tools.
Absolutely, man.
And I think, we saw him win a lot on the interior, which honestly, if that's what he ends up being, if he just ends up being like a 3-tech for the Raiders, that they could use that too. So no matter what Gregory Rousseau's outcome here is, I think he has a chance to succeed. But I do think if we saw him play this year, we would have seen a lot of development that we would be looking for in the first round here. If you're taking Gregory Rousseau, I think we would have seen that if he played in 2020. So with that being said, I do think the Raiders are kind of getting a steal here, and they're kind of benefiting from that opt-out, because I do think Gregory Rousseau is going to be a good player for them. Another one where the stars kind of align for me.
I completely agree with you, man. Pick 18, the Miami Dolphins are back on the clock. And to me, I think they're going weapon here. One way or another, however you slice this, they're going weapon. So I considered taking Najee Harris here, obviously the back end of Alabama that everyone loves. And he's had those huge blow-up games that Bleacher Report posts, like 5 touchdowns, 400 yards and shit like that. But Travis Etienne is also nothing to scoff at, but I think they're going receiver. And I think they're going Rashad Bateman here out of Minnesota. He's the guy that I want. I know he probably won't fall that far, but my Packers to get in the back end of the draft, because I think he's incredibly talented. There are other good receivers. Like if we go to the receiver pool here, Kadarius Toney is picking up a lot of talk as well. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Kadarius Toney is picking up a lot of talk as well. But to me, Rashad Bateman is the guy that they're going to take here at 18 out of Minnesota. He's got all the skills, man, to be a great receiver in the league.
Yeah. 3 picks in a row where we've seen the stars align. I think that is absolutely the right pick for the Miami Dolphins. What they need to do, if they're sticking with Tua, which as we've already established, we think they should do, is surround him with talent. And right now, we've already given him Penei Sewell on the offensive line. That just brings up the floor and the ceiling of the O-line. And now we're giving him a receiver who is, in my opinion, and I think you'll agree, is the 4th best receiver in the draft. Yes, he's not on the level of the top 3. He's definitely a tier below. But he still is very talented. Honestly, what he brings to the table is a lot of what the Dolphins need. They already have a speed threat in Jakeem Grant. They have kind of that big-bodied guy in Devontae Parker. And we've seen him flash, but he's been a little too inconsistent to rely on as a number 1.
Yeah.
What you're getting with Rashad Bateman is, and I'm not making this comparison because he's not going to be him, but he reminds me a lot of Devontae Adams with his release off the line of scrimmage, which is how Devontae Adams wins in the NFL. Rashad Bateman arguably has the best release in this draft class, and his route running is really good. He is not. What brings him a tier lower is his athleticism. He is not as fast or as quick as Waddle, Chase, or Smith, and that's what puts him down here.
In his toolbox.
Exactly. He's got a lot. He's got a refined skill set, and I think he can win right away in the NFL, which is what the Dolphins need.
I completely agree with you, man. And so with the pick number 19, we're looking at the Washington football team. I almost just called them their old name, and the video would have gotten taken off the internet. But yeah, the Washington football team is on the board here. And there's a few things that I think they could do here. I think QB is absolutely in the question. Wide receiver is also in the question. And you know, if you look at their team needs, their corner, safety, linebacker, it's all relevant needs.
Yep.
I think the football team here is going to take a weapon to go on the side. And I think they're going to take a wide receiver as I move to the wide receiver category of our players available thing here. And the guy who I think they're going to take here is Kadarius Toney. There's an argument here. In fact, I think there's a strong argument here to take Mac Jones and kind of just develop him. Well, actually, I don't want to. I might talk myself into it here, honestly, because I haven't hit the draft yet. But they kind of need the next phase of their franchise, right? Like Alex Smith, incredible man, incredible story. Unfortunately, he is older, and that leg is going to limit him in his career moving forward. Heineke, you know, Heineke was the dream backup guy that they signed for.
Nice gave him a nice extension.
Yeah, like rewarded him for that amazing performance. And you know what, man? The more I talk myself into it, the more I see them taking Mac Jones here. He is the kind of guy that can step in. I don't want to, you know, call him Dwayne Haskins 2.0, but I think you have to roll the dice on a quarterback if you're the football team. You have glaring holes, but your glaring holes aren't craters. Like you can still be an okay team moving forward and kind of take a risk on a guy that you have a little bit of time to develop with the quarterbacks that you have on your roster. So with that, I'm going to take quarterback Mac Jones out of Alabama. He was going to go eventually. We all know that he's going in this first round eventually. So I think the football team at 19, without having to move around at all on the board or give up any assets, it's a good time to get a quarterback.
Yeah, and you sniped me here. My Chicago Bears, which I'm making the pick for. I was going to take Mac Jones, and I think if I'm the Bears, hopefully I didn't trade for Carson Wentz, first of all. But
that would be so funny as a Packers fan. That would just make my day.
Yeah, I would. I'd be happy for you on that one. But yeah, Mac Jones is the perfect quarterback for the Bears. He's exactly what they need. Going from like this series of highly volatile quarterbacks that just throw interceptions on a whim. Mac Jones is not that. He can play within structure. He would be really nice for Matt Nagy, who the Bears are sticking with this year. Just kind of actually execute the offense that Matt Nagy has always wanted to do.
Exactly.
So I really would have liked that pick for the Bears, but obviously I can't take him. He's off the board to the football team. So we're going to be going in a different direction here. The Bears have a lot of needs, especially on the offense. Their defense, I think I'm gonna steer away from that because defense is so inconsistent year to year. Even if you have great personnel, it's never necessarily going to be good. But I think the Bears are good enough on defense to kind of avoid that. I'm going to go offense here, and I'm between offensive line and playmaker here. And I think what I'm going to do with the Bears, I think they have enough pieces on their O-line where they can kind of string some things together in the second round. This is a deep offensive line class, and they can do things in the second round and free agency. Where I'm going to go and replace Allen Robinson here, who I think is going to leave in free agency. And for me personally, I'm thinking about who they have on the roster. They have Darnell Mooney, who's kind of a deep threat.
Yep.
And
they
Mooney's have
as well.
Yeah, he was kind of a nice sleeper. I can't remember if he was undrafted or if he was I think he was undrafted.
But he was he's working well as like a low key guy.
Yeah, he has been. He showed that he can do some nice things. And then they have Riley Ridley, who he will probably get some more playing time next year. He has not done anything so far. And then they still have Anthony Miller. So I want somebody in here who I think I can rely on. Whoever my quarterback is, just get them a nice weapon here. And I think that's going to be my favorite receiver left on the board is Rondale Moore. But it's tough because with the personnel on their roster, it doesn't make a ton of sense. They already have a lot of speedy guys. So that makes me want to take Terrace Marshall, who's more of a bigger body guy. As we speak here, I'm weighing it in my mind. It's definitely going to be between those two guys. They're my two favorite left. Obviously, you still have Kadarius Toney there.
Yeah.
And he's a nice player too.
He's been rising up some draft boards as well lately.
Yeah. It's tough. I think I'm just going to stick with my guns here, and I'm just going to take Rondale Moore. I think he is the best receiver available. He doesn't necessarily fit with what the Bears wanted, what the Bears already have, but he's the best player. You can't be making decisions based on the type of personnel you have on your roster when you're the Chicago Bears and they have such big needs. They need an outside receiver is the bottom line. They need a guy who can get open, and that's what Rondale Moore does. Whether or not he fits with the existing personnel doesn't really matter. I'm going with him. I like him.
Yep, absolutely, man. I think that's a great pick. I think that's the direction that they will probably go in with the way the NFL is moving and just the offensive explosive era that we are in. And the next thing is the Indianapolis Colts. So now we're getting into the playoff teams now. I mean, I guess we were with the Bears too, but I don't even count them as a playoff team really, because, did they even really deserve to be there? That's a whole other question. But anyway, we're moving into the good teams that can like make picks. They feel like they're, they're flexible in this position. So I think the Colts here, they have a few options, of course, but I think they're going to take an edge rusher. And I think they're going to take Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. I really love this player coming out of Georgia. He's incredibly explosive coming off the edge. And I think he will make that Colts defense that much better and just put that much pressure on, opposing quarterbacks. So Azeez Ojulari is my guy out of Georgia for the Colts here.
I like it. I think that makes a lot of sense. They need defense. Speaking of needing defense, the Tennessee Titans are on the clock. They could use a lot of different positions on the defense. They obviously got cooked in a lot of games. I think, honestly, they could use another weapon on offense with Corey Davis leaving. I think that's something you could consider here. I'm looking at the talent left on the board, though, and I think it leans more towards defense. So I think that's the direction I'm going to go here. They need an edge defender. Jadeveon Clowney didn't work out last year. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to go with Jason Owe from Penn State.
There he is.
I think he's a really nice fit for the Titans. Obviously they play a 3-4. He's got really nice speed. I think he's kind of brings what they've been missing across from Harold Landry there. Kind of brings a similar thing that Harold Landry does, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. They've needed pass rush for a long time. Getting pressure on the quarterback will take some of the weight off the secondary, which they do need to address. Like I said, they do need to address receiver, but it is a deep receiver class. They can do that later on. I think Jason Owe makes a lot of sense there for the Tennessee Titans.
You're absolutely right. And back on the clock after the number 2 pick is the New York Jumbo Jets. And I think this is when it happens. I think this is when someone takes Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama.
Wow.
These are guys that in previous years have gone in the top 5. And we've seen how that hasn't worked out for anyone. But you're now back here at 23. And I'm not a believer in that RBs really even matter that much. But look at the talent that Najee Harris has. They've got their, some nice players on their O-line now. They've got their quarterback. They've got him. They could go receiver here, but I think they've got Mims. They've got a few other guys. I mean, they're not the bomb squad that Jets fans think they are, but they've got a few nice players in there. And Najee Harris will really, Frank Gore is one thing, but Najee Harris will really help, I think, your young rookie quarterback excel, to have a good back to lean on in his first few years, at least in the NFL.
I'm going to have to agree with the need at RB. They definitely don't have enough talent there. I am just one of those people. I'm never taking a running back in the first round under any circumstances, regardless of who it is. I just have no interest in wasting a pick on that position. I think if you're like the Baltimore Ravens, where like they could actually use a running back in their offense because their running game is so efficient with the way it's set up around Lamar Jackson in the second round. Okay, sure. In the second round, I'm never taking a running back in the first round.
Well, you know what, too, man,
that matters.
I agree with the sentiment completely, but I'm also considering we're mixing kind of what we think our evaluation is and kind of the way the draft board is going to fall. Najee Harris, in my opinion, will not make it out of the first round. So
sure,
this is where I think he's going to, it's a nice landing spot for him, kind of because of the need. And the Jets, they've got the guts to kind of do something a little exciting like this for the fans that have been waiting with their QB and Becton and Harris and Mims. They've got a nice, fun little thing going on. I think they need that in New York. So, anyway, enough.
Yeah,
On
I can understand that. I would probably go. I would probably go wide receiver if I'm gonna go like somebody across from Denzel Mims. That's what I would do. I agree with you. I think there's a possibility that this is what actually happens, but there's no chance I'm doing it if I'm Joe Douglas. But anyways, moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's my pick. I think this pick right here makes a ton of sense for the Steelers because for a long time the Steelers' bread and butter was obviously the killer bees with Big Ben, Brown, and Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
But what helped set that up was a very good O-line. And the past couple of years, the Steelers' O-line is aging and it's falling apart. And that's part of what killed them last year is they didn't really have, like obviously Big Ben being old and washed up doesn't help.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the pieces in front of them to set him up and make plays downfield. So you saw a lot of short stuff, a lot of passes, short yardage plays, short passes behind the line of scrimmage. And it seems like they're sticking with Big Ben next year. And if they're going to do that, they need some protection here. And so I see a player on the board in Elijah Vera Tucker that makes a ton of sense. And usually I'm not somebody that favors position flexibility over talent on the board, but I do think that the position flexibility that Elijah Vera Tucker brings is important because the Steelers need pieces all across the O-line. They have some players aging with Villanueva, with David DeCastro. They have some guys hitting free agency with Filer. They hit on Dotson in the mid rounds like last year, but just give me a player who can play all positions, can succeed early in the NFL, probably the best O-lineman left on the board. And on top of that, I'm just going to pick him, and wherever I end up needing pieces, if it's at tackle, if it's at guard, I'll figure that out later. And obviously, the other thing is Pouncey retired just recently, so
you're absolutely right.
Makes too much sense.
Speaking of offensive linemen with versatility on the line, to me, the Jaguars, as much as people talk about getting your QB that protector, Trevor Lawrence is going to need that as well. Cam Robinson for the Jaguars is becoming a free agent, I believe. And there are some questions there, as well as just questions over the whole line. And I'm going to take Tevin Jenkins here of Oklahoma State. He's moved all across the line a little bit on both sides. Like he's been a left and right tackle. He'll probably be a right tackle, but he's a great player. He's a strong, big guy who plays with a good demeanor. And I think the Jaguars will eat that up. And Tevin Jenkins will be drafted to protect their number one pick, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm not going to say too much about that because I agree with the idea. They definitely need to protect him somehow, so it's not crazy that they're going this route. And they do have some nice playmakers there already, but I might be tempted to go playmaker just to get Trevor Lawrence a new weapon. But I don't think that's a bad pick at all. So for me, I'm going with the Browns here. And I'm going with the best player on the board who has not surprisingly been drafted yet. And that's Christian Barmore, interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. It's a big need for the Browns. It's kind of been a big need for a long time. Obviously, their defense was probably the reason why they didn't win. They didn't go further than they did. It wasn't a big problem in the playoffs. I guess they let the Steelers climb back into that game a little bit, but against the Chiefs, it wasn't. They held the Chiefs down relatively well. But in any case, they've needed defensive interior for a while now. They obviously signed Sheldon Richardson. He's been okay. Larry Ogunjobi is a free agent and never lived up to the hype anyways. So I like Christian Barmore a lot. He brings a high floor as a run defender, but he can also push the pocket and get after the quarterback, which is what the Browns need, getting that next to Myles Garrett. With Myles Garrett, demanding so much attention from the offense, it's going to open up some holes for Christian Barmore to make some plays. So I think that's just a nice piece. The Browns need to add more than that to their defense. And obviously getting some players back healthy on defense will help a lot too. But linebacker could be, I think linebacker could be a great pick here. There was a couple other players I could see the Browns going with. But to me, Christian Barmore is just too good of a player and obviously a need for the Browns to pass on there.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Comes out of a great system as well, is ready to go. So I agree. And now the Ravens at 27 are on the clock. And, it says here edge is their biggest need. There is some validity to that, but I'm taking a weapon, and I'm taking Kadarius Toney. The Ravens need to do
I like
something
it.
big here. And I think this is the kind of guy that can kind of change your offense, or at least that's what they have to hope. And so he's a great player. He's been climbing boards recently. He's one of the new kind of draft guys that people like in terms of the receiver position. So Kadarius Toney's a great player. He's going to add a nice weapon for Lamar, and it really opens up hopefully the field for that Ravens offense that just loves to run the ball. They need to throw it a little bit down the field as well.
So I'm on the clock here. Well, first of all, I'll say I think that's a good pick, because I'm a big fan of just taking playmakers all the time, whether you really need them or not. I question the idea of giving Lamar. I mean, I guess he can be more of a gadget player than Marquise Brown, but we haven't really seen a lot of success between those two guys. So getting he's not like Marquise Brown. I don't want to make that comparison because he's not. Yeah. He's definitely more of a of kind of a weapon that you move around the field. I don't know. I think I could see it working. I could see it not working. I'm never going to question taking a playmaker just to kind of raise the floor of your offense, but I don't know. There's some other things I probably would have gone with the Ravens, maybe to beef up their defense a little bit more, maybe even get a tight end, which the Ravens love using. But anyways, enough about that. On to this New Orleans Saints here, which is a very interesting situation this offseason. For a long time, it looked like it was written in pen, moving on from the Drew Brees era, but we haven't heard much about it recently. It's a possibility that he comes back. I'm not going to, with no quarterbacks fitting this area of the draft, I'm not going to think about that anyways, but it just is interesting for the trickle down effect of the rest of the team, what that's going to do. In any case, I think the Saints are in a position here they could use a lot of different pieces. Adding to their secondary with Marshawn Lattimore becoming a free agent, I think he has another year on his contract. I can't recall if they extended him. I don't think so. That is a need. But they do have some other pieces in their secondary. I think they could probably get by. It's probably their biggest need because they do have some other pieces with Marcus Williams hitting free agency.
Yes, exactly.
Secondary is probably their biggest need, but I don't love a lot of the players that are around here in this range. So I'm not gonna reach for need. I think there will be some more guys available later on. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take Jeremiah Owusu Karamoa at a Notre Dame at linebacker. I think he's the best player on the board right now. And I think the Saints have a need at linebacker.
You said
obviously
JOK, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
At a Notre Dame. Need at linebacker. Demario Davis isn't getting any younger, as good as he is right now. They tried to make Quan Alexander work, but he's just too injury prone and too inconsistent. They need more linebackers. I mean, Alex Anzalone isn't moving the needle. It's not a big position of need, but I mean, he did win the Butkus Award for the best linebacker in college football. You're getting a good player, and you're getting a high floor player.
Man. You're getting an exciting young player that you can put in there who can play across the entire field.
And with so many question marks on offense, I don't think it makes sense to go there. You already have a good offensive line and good weapons. You could add another weapon. I could see that. They do have Jared Cook hitting free agency. I don't want to spend too much time on the Saints because it's just way too many question marks, but
there is.
I think secondary is the biggest need. I think if you're not going linebacker, that is probably the way to go. But JOK is just too good to leave on the board here.
No, he absolutely is. And we move on to pick 29, which is my favorite team, the Green Bay Packers. And as you can see, I'm already in a specific category here. I loaded it up already. And that's because we're not playing around. We're going to take a receiver this year. It's either that or O-line. And I just think we're going receiver. We're just going receiver. People want it. It's a narrative thing. All of it put together, to me, it just points to the Packers taking a receiver. I'm hoping in real life Kadarius Toney falls to the Pack. I don't think that that's going to happen, but I'm hoping. But aside from that, I'm going to take Terrence Marshall Jr. from LSU. I've watched some of his tape. he's a great player, an exciting young receiver who can come in and kind of just, it's the classic narrative with the pack draft. We need talent for Rodgers. This is where we're finally going to get him his first round receiver who can come in and hopefully make an impact. And there's not too much really to say else about that pick.
Yeah, I do want to add some things though. If I'm the Packers, I'm kind of annoyed that this is the way it shaked out because Terrace Marshall is a good player.
Mm-hmm.
I do like him, but he's not really what the Packers need in terms of a receiver. They've had these like big, I mean, they've had these big, tall guys as the secondary options to Devontae Adams for a long time, and it has not really worked out. Obviously, Terrace Marshall is a different player. He's a lot better than the guys that they have on the roster.
Haven't really gotten them like a top guy though, like a top guy with those talents. Like there's lots of kind of big tall guys. Like Travis Fulgham is a guy like that. But like Terrace Marshall Jr. is a little bit more of like a more refined player.
I don't want to go that route and be that guy who just like makes sort of I guess measurable comparisons because he's a different player. It doesn't really matter what those other guys have done. He's a different player. And I think just taking a receiver in general is really good. But for me, I would want to add some speed and sort of like a smaller, shifty guy.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I would have taken Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss here. I think this is the perfect spot for him. I mean, if Rondale Moore is probably ideal, but he went a long time ago. But that's probably where I would go. I think either way, you're getting a good player. But Elijah Moore is more of what the Packers need, and he's more NFL ready. And Terrace, I mean, they're both NFL ready, but Elijah Moore
just a different kind of receiver.
He can do what the Packers need right away.
Yeah, and as we do more mocks as the week goes on, like we'll have more opportunity to really dive into more of these players, as well. I will specifically, so to find more scheme fits among it as well of what works other than at just positional need. But you're on the clock with the Buffalo Bills here.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I'll say that because the Bills, they have a lot of questions on their O-line. Their right tackle, Darrell Williams, is hitting free agency. I think they have a good chance of re-signing him just because he's always kind of flown under the radar. But he was one of the best right tackles in the league last year under the radar.
Yeah.
And they need to make a replacement there. I feel pretty good about them being able to do that though, and elsewhere. They need help on the interior too. They got killed by Chris Jones in the AFC Championship game. And on top of that, their running game sucked all year. Part of the reason is because you don't have great running backs, but the bigger reason is that they didn't have good run blocking. So that's a big need. At the same time, and I think probably it's tough to say. I think the Bills are a relatively smart organization. Maybe they'll understand that, or maybe they'll be stupid and take a running back and think that'll solve their problems. But in my opinion, it's tough. I think I'm going to go with Nick Bolton, linebacker here, to kind of just go in a completely different direction of what I was just talking about. And the reason why is because the Bills have relied on their linebacker core in Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano, and Milano's hitting free agency. So you want to get somebody in to replace him. And there's a lot of options that I've talked about it a lot. There's a lot of options at O-line in this class. It's incredibly deep, and there's a lot of options in free agency too. So they have other recourse to fix that problem. And in the past, they've done a really good job at just taking a lot of shots on O-line and then finding some guys out of those shots that pan out. That's what they did a few years ago with Morse, with Darrell Williams, I think even with Feliciano. So they can find another way to make up for that, but it's not so easy to find a linebacker to make up for what Matt Milano does, who will probably be leaving in free agency.
Absolutely. Milano does so much for that organization that they need to find something there to plug in. So the Chiefs are going to take Travis Etienne. No, I'm just kidding. They're not going to take him back.
They won't make that mistake twice.
Yeah, no. They're going to go O-line here. I mean, the Chiefs just need to protect their guy more. Like you see, obviously it sucked the two tackles were out, but to me, there's question marks with those injuries on Fisher, and just you don't know how much longer they can really go at that high level. You got to just continue to invest in protecting the best player in the league. So for me, it's Samuel Cosme here out of Texas. Protect the best player in the league. Don't pick a weapon. You don't need to pick a weapon. And to me, like there's great players left here on the board, but you need to take the best guy at protecting your franchise.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I'm gonna get too much argument there. I think they've kind of needed a guy. I mean, Schwartz and Fisher are both getting up there in age, so it doesn't hurt to have that guy waiting in the wings. I mean, we saw last year their big problem was both of those guys got hurt and they had no other options. Even if Cosme can't start right away, he's a good option to have waiting in the wings to develop and to play in a pinch if they need him. So to have that backup plan.
And we're talking about Super Bowl teams here, right? It's like we're talking about teams that are already so well made that this is just a pick that they need to make it's almost an insurance pick in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, the Chiefs, one of their biggest problems last year was having that mindset and thinking, oh, we're good everywhere else, so let's just take a running back. But that's not what they're doing here. They're doubling up on positions that they think they're good at. I mean, they do have a lot of holes, but like on paper, if Fisher and Schwartz are healthy, they're fine at tackle, but that's not always going to happen.
Yeah,
and if it doesn't, need a backup plan.
Story, right? So you need to have that guy to kind of plug in there.
Yeah. Next on the board is the Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I will be making the final pick in this mock draft for them. And this is another interesting spot because they have a ton of key free agents. Chris Godwin, Shaq Barrett, Lavonte David. No, Mike Evans is under contract.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Okay. Antonio Brown is a free agent. Some other guys too that probably aren't coming to mind. But Leonard Fournette is another one. Maybe they go ATN here, but that would be really stupid, obviously. In my opinion, they have a lot of it really, to me, this pick depends a lot on who leaves in free agency. Like if they lose Shaq Barrett, they need edge. That would probably be a way that they go. If they lose Lavonte David, I could see them taking Zaven Collins. Because Zaven Collins, he can play both. He can be kind of a hybrid guy. So maybe that's the direction we go. They need, if they lose a receiver, if they lose Godwin or Antonio Brown, I mean, they have some guys already on the roster that can replace that. But
they do.
They'll need to do that.
Receiver position.
So I don't know that I could see them going with a receiver here, but they do have some other. I think they are going to lose at least one of those guys in free agency. I think they're franchise tagging Godwin because they want to keep the weapons for Brady. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think they find a way to pay at least one of Lavonte David and Shaq Barrett. I think probably Shaq Barrett gets priced out. Like he'll want to get paid big, and I don't think the Buccaneers will be able to afford to do that. But regardless of who it is, exactly, I'm going to take Zaven Collins, who is a linebacker, but he can be a kind of a hybrid guy. He can play edge if they need him to. So regardless of who they lose out on there, he can be a great blitzer. He can be developed on the edge, or he can replace Lavonte David. I think either way, you're getting a great player there, and the Buccaneers won't think twice about that, regardless of which one of those guys goes. Again, if they lose a receiver, they could probably go that direction. But I think Zaven Collins makes the most sense.
No, you're absolutely right, man. Zaven Collins perfectly fits in there with free agency holes, coming in the future. So here's our mock. We'll just review it real quick before we, kind of just list it off before we end the video. Number 1, we got the Jaguars taking Lawrence. The Jets take Zach Wilson. Dolphins taking Penny Sewell. The Falcons taking Patrick Surtain. The Bengals taking Jamar Chase, pairing him up with Joe Burrow. The Eagles taking Devonta Smith, the Heisman winner. The Lions take Justin Fields, get their quarterback of the future. The Panthers take Trey Lance. The Broncos take Caleb Farley. The Cowboys take Rashawn Slater, protect their QB, build on that O-line. The Giants get Jalen Waddle, the next Tyreek Hill. The Niners they take J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. The Chargers get Kyle Pitts, one of the most exciting players in the draft. The Vikings get Christian Darrisaw. The Patriots get Micah Parsons, a great linebacker out of Penn State. The Cardinals get Kwity Paye. The Raiders get Gregory Rousseau. The Dolphins get Rashad Bateman. Football team gets Mac Jones. I like how it says Washington, Washington here. That's kind of funny. The Bears get Rondell Moore, receiver out of Purdue. The Colts get Azeez Ojulari, an edge out of Georgia, to really bolster that pass rush. The Titans get Jason Owa. The Jets get Najee Harris, an exciting pick for a franchise that really needs it. The Steelers get Elijah Vera Tucker, inside O-line at USC. Jags get Tevin Jenkins. The Browns get Christian Barmore. Kadarius Toney goes to the Ravens. J.O.K. to the Saints. Terrence Marshall Jr., the Packers finally get a receiver to help out their offense. Not that they really need it, but Rodgers loves the weapons. Nick Bolton on the Bills. And then you've got the Chiefs taking an offensive tackle, Samuel Cosme, and Zaven Collins filling in that free agent linebacker hole for the Buccaneers. So overall, I think this is a really cool first mock for the show. And here, let me stop sharing so you can actually see us. There we go. Really cool mock for the show. Yeah, appreciate anyone that watched through. And please, like we said, comment your teams down below. You'll be one of the only commenters. So you comment, hey man, I want to see a Bengals mock. We will do a full second round Bengals mock all the way through. Yeah, so comment below, let us know what you think. And thanks for watching. Appreciate it. It's good fun talking about the draft, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Peace out.